have to be one against the other. There can be smart decisions that are made that are decisions that can provide the supplies that we need for the human side, and can also consider and address the environmental, the most important environmental issues. I mean, that's really that's kind of the paradigm where the water world and regulation and law has gone, particularly the 2009 state legislation. And I think our ability to chart a course within that is probably going to be the most effective way for us to protect our needs.
Okay. I recognize how many people are from down in the Lake Tulloch area, and I'd like to open it up if somebody would like to ask a question or two, but I'd like to limit it to a couple of minutes if anybody has anything to add.
Are you saying per person?
Yes.
Bill McHale from Lake Tulloch. I'd kind of like to summarize Mr. Egerton's presentation with a few numbers, because I don't think they add up. And I'm not a great mathematician, and I don't mean anything against you. But you talk about 45,000 acre feet shortfall on New Maloney's, and there's only one place that can come from, and that's Lake Tulloch. And we're at 55,000. You take 45,000 out of us, that leaves 10,000. That puts us 10,000 or 1,000 foot below dead pool level, according to your own stats. And I don't care at that point in time where you put the end of the pipe. We're below dead pool level. And it doesn't, to me, make sense to say we got plenty of water. And that's what OID is saying. Unfortunately, Jeff, I mean, you mentioned we're in good shape for water. We're 1,000 feet below dead pool level.
Was that a to date statistic, or is it? No. Let me. Can I just ask something? Yeah. Is that a projected number, or is that the existing number?
And all those numbers were provided by Tridam. Those are the numbers based on essentially last year. And so I think that's why it's so important that we stay focused on this, and the fact that everybody's coming together and we're paying close attention to it. There's going to have to be some give here. You can see it's going to have to happen. I got the sense that the Tridam is realizing that they're probably going to have to move somewhat off that 420,000 acre foot, 420,000 acre foot number. And I think that we're all saying to the regulatory community, we need to have serious conversations now about how we readjust the flows for other purposes, so that we don't end up in exactly the situation you're talking about.
Dave, part of that conversation with Tridam might be to include, we know that you're wanting to store as much water as you can at Donalds and Beardsley. If it means to release some of that to augment the lake level at Tulloch, then we just ask that you do so. It's just an option. They could generate power in the release, and it will also give them a cold pool to work from if they want further. So I hope that can be part of the discussion.
And I think really, again, it's going to be key what that operations plan looks like that comes out.
Absolutely.
That's the key one. So we're right in the middle of that. I know Bill's spending a lot of time on it. It was reassuring to hear that, that Tridam doesn't expect to go below what has been historic maintenance level. But we don't know that really until we see the plan that comes out. So,
George, did you have a
George Fry. I would support Director Mills's request to bring back at a future agenda, and hopefully maybe at the next agenda, next board meeting, to support or mirror what the Board of Supervisors did yesterday in terms of a resolution. I think time is of the essence, and I think that if the dates are very close together, then it looks like we are all on the same page going forward. Thank you.
Good morning, Al Segallant, Taxpayer Association. Hate to say it, I agree with George. He's right. Dennis Mills made an excellent recommendation. You should have a resolution that mirrors the Board of Supervisors resolution. From my view, my reading of it, That resolution is calling for stopping some irrational federal policy. Federal policy that means draining our water supply to save fish, to work on desalination in the delta, and to try to create cool water. All three of these things are not important when we're in the times of drought, and we have a very serious drought now. So we have a short-term problem, long-term problem. Short-term problem, it looks like we're clicking together fairly good harmony between the different agencies. That's a good thing, and we seem to be trying to deal with facts, and I'm glad that we're getting better at that. Long-term policy, we have to ask ourselves, what are we involved with? Isn't our purpose to develop not adequate, but abundant water, reasonably priced and clean? Abundant, clean, reasonably priced. Okay, if that could be not only the policy that we follow, the CCWD, but also the federal government, also the state government, wow, the solutions will start to happen. We quit building dams 40 years ago. Why? Is wild and scenic? Is wild and scenic a scientific type thing? Or is it a religion? You can't argue with a religion.
Thank you. By the way, you said quality, clean, and...
Reasonably priced.
That's our mission statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
wrote it many years ago. Who did the Board of Supervisors, who's their resolution addressed to?
I've got a copy of it here.
I'm just curious. I mean,
Dave has it. Last page,
what,
Dave.
what agency is it directed to?
It's on the last page.
Is it in our agenda?
Political office.
I will be giving everyone on the board a copy
Is
of
it on
it
there,
as a resolution. I did make it up for everybody.
It's generally, it says that it's in supporting the work of local agencies, special districts, and federal and state representatives regarding the potential significant water releases from Lake Tulloch and New Melones, dry and or drought years. So it's just a general statement of support for the ongoing efforts of agencies like ours to try to deal with this. Yeah, that I think could be presented in any form.
Okay.
I've got a comment on, I'll be as political as I can. I've heard a lot of discussions that are somewhat disappointing, and all the blame has gone to fish. Fish are the reason why this is happening. Well, if you look at why the Stanislaus flows are the way they are, and you spend time doing research and understanding the agreements that went in place when those dams were constructed to begin with, and the obligations of the dam operators, before they could even start putting 1 ounce of concrete in the project, they agreed to specific things. And I understand that obviously time changes. However, one of the primary responsibilities of the Stanislaus River, right or wrong, has been to maintain water quality in the delta, whether it's the Vernalis flow requirements for beneficial, cold water, or to hold back salt intrusion, or DO. Now, why are they interested? Why should we all be interested in holding back saltwater intrusion up the delta? It's not for fish, people. It's for municipalities that pull water out of the delta and then have to treat for salt removal. It's a tremendous expense to do that. The flows that come down through the Stanislaus River hold that salt back so that municipalities have cleaner water to use. But the more and most important purpose of those flows is because almond trees and tomatoes don't do well with salt water. Holding back the salt at Vernalis maintains tremendous thousands of acres of agricultural lands that can be irrigated or receive seepage water from the delta. Those flows, although they benefit fish, are primarily focused in many areas for agricultural production. So should we start talking about the farmers being responsible for draining Lake Tulloch? Be careful.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
I do need to respond.
absolutely.
Okay, we talked about, how, humans always come first. That's true, however, there are many people in the world, many in your area that you represent, may have a slight kind of the balanced approach, which I think is always really the way to go. There is no doubt in my mind that fish need to receive less water. There is no doubt about that. But fish, folks, are not the only reason why this flow issue and the potential to draw the lake down. Okay?
Thank you,
I
Director.
do
No, it's
need-
obviously much more complex.
I need to respond to this, if, for no
Fish is
other
an easy
reason.
four-letter word, but it's obviously much more complex.
I was
It's a
directly
complicated system.
involved with New Maloney's back in the early 80s, even before that, with the Bureau of Reclamation and the Army Corps and everybody else. If you look at Wikipedia, you'll see very clearly that the reason for New Maloney's being placed was irrigation and flood control. Those are the two primary reasons, not for salinity reduction, not for fish saving or anything else. So let's get it straight as to what that was originally put in place for, and take the time to look in Wikipedia or anywhere else and find out what the background is to that reason why that reservoir was built.
Okay. So
And I'll be
I
done
would,
with
I would love to hear more about it, but we need to
Can we
go
take
on.
a short, can we take a short break? And
yes.
Can we end that agenda item and take a short break, please? It's up
Break?
to you, yeah. I'm
Yes.
just-
Okay.
I think we've talked,
No, because we're going into a discussion action. Yeah, okay. Let's just take a 5-minute break, please.
Next
Yeah,
on the
right.
agenda. Okay, great, thank you.
5D, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
D-Dog.
5D, right. And that would be a discussion action regarding Assembly Bill 142, Bigelow, Wild and Scenic Rivers, McCullum River, position of support for AB 142. Dave Egerton.
Madam President, thank you, and I want to thank the members of the audience today, a number of elected officials who are here. Thank you very much for supervisors that are here from a number of counties and directors of water agencies. Thank you very much. And Supervisor, I want to thank you as well for the last item. I didn't realize you were going to be on it, but thank you for your work on that yesterday. This item is to consider taking a position on a bill that was introduced in January by Assemblymember Bigelow, who of course represents our district in the Assembly of the California State Legislature. This bill is one that a number of agencies within our area have taken positions on, as well as organizations in the area as well, some in support of it, some in opposition to it. The water agencies and adjoining water agencies in the region have are or in process of taking positions in support of it. The procedurally, this bill's been introduced, and there's going to be a hearing on it, and the Assembly Natural Resources Committee, they're targeting March 23rd, I believe is the date that they're targeting for the hearing, and so there's an effort right now to take positions on this bill before it reaches the committee hearing, so that the Assembly knows, and particularly our Assembly member knows where the positions of stakeholders are as they enter into deliberations on the policy side. At our last legislative committee meeting, we convened our meeting on Friday. This was one of the items that we discussed at length, and there was a recommendation that came out of that meeting that the board consider a position of support on AB 142 and amend with a couple of suggested amendments that I'll discuss in a moment. The bill itself, as the board, I'm sure, will clearly recalls, as of last year in last legislative session, SB 1199 was one of the bills that made its way through the legislature, but ultimately ended up on the suspense calendar. But it was a bill to designate 37 miles of the McCullum River as wild and scenic under the state legislation. we have members of the audience who work very close to that and certainly have far more firsthand knowledge of the ins and outs of the development of that. The amendments, there were a number of amendments that were considered and worked through the process on that. A lot of time and effort spent by a number of agencies, organizations. And so coming out of that after last year, there was a recognition, I think, by the water agencies to try to do something to be proactive, to try to inject themselves in the legislative arena in a way that would try to be representative of the water resource needs of the communities up here as a considered wild and scenic designation. So what you've ended up with is a bill out of that effort, AB 142, which would put an additional requirement on something that's already codified into state law. There's a procedure in place that the Secretary of Natural Resources for the state, when presented with a potential designation of a river for wild and scenic under state law, is to prepare a report on that, a recommendation to the legislature and to the governor. That is what's being addressed here in AB 142 would be to add another requirement to that study, that study would also include the water resource reliability needs of communities relying upon the Mokelumne River system. So what it would seek to do is then again make that part of the study that would come out, and then that recommendation and that report would be used to inform the decision ultimately by the legislature on whether to designate some or all of those 37 miles as wild and scenic under state law. The request by Amador Water Agency and others who are close to this has been, take a support position, and that's what we considered at the legislative committee meeting. There was a feeling in that venue, and this is based on some of the concerns that have been raised by those who see this as a stumbling block for wild and scenic. It's just basically a way to stall the proceeding moving forward with legislation. And by others who simply want to see some changes to this bill to try to make it, put some bookends on it and to make it more clearly define what this report is going to look like. And so what we ended up, the committee ended up coming to a position that they felt that there were actually some amendments that could be made to this bill that would make it stronger. The two main issues that have been brought up that, and I'm sure some people here today will probably speak to that, are one that as it's written today, 142 doesn't set any kind of time frame on when this work would be completed. So, it's the feeling that, basically this could be used as simply a stall tactic, never to reach the question of whether there is the criteria has been met under state law and this should be designated. That's one issue. The other is that there are other past reports, federal reports on different segments of some portions of the 37-mile stretch that have analyzed wild and scenic. It's my understanding that analysis was done for purposes of federal listing, which is a different set of law. But there are studies that do exist, and so there's been those that have said, you really need to address the fact that these exist. You need to explain why you need to do another study if these studies have already been completed. And so ultimately where the legislative committee landed was one, the bill, to support the bill, but to seek amendments that one would put some kind of a time frame on the actual completion of the report itself, a reasonable amount of time. Certainly not to compromise the quality of the study or the effort, and it's going to involve a number of different stakeholders, hopefully, to be able to be part of that. But to put some deadline on it so that there is a commitment to actually deliver a report within some period of time.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Who's going to fund it?
Yeah, that's,
I mean, are you saying our amendment would not only require the study, but require the state fund the study?
That's a great question, Director Davidson. As of right now, this study is already something that's contemplated within state law already. That this a study regarding the suitability of a river segment for designation of wild and scenic is already addressed in the statute as far as a report to be prepared by the resource secretary. It's my understanding that doesn't happen in every case. There are times when designations have been made by the legislature without going through that process. But if that process is used, and that's what this seeks to do, is to leverage the existing process under law, you would expect that would be something that would be all or in part funded by the state.
So if say we put a 2-year deadline on, another agency doing something, and then it doesn't then they don't accomplish it in that 2-year period, then would they have to go back to the drawing board and start over again? Or would they just, could they just eliminate that requirement? I mean, I just hate to close in, particularly the state of California, into doing anything in a timely manner. And then, because I kind of want to know what the consequences will be if they don't get it done.
You got it. And I think, the point would be, it would certainly be, we would want to see that whatever time period would be set would be something that is realistic to complete a meaningful study that actually gets down to the issue and gets a broad and informed analysis so that, whatever recommendation is made by the Secretary on the suitability has thoroughly analyzed and considered, considered the issue in full. So we certainly wouldn't want to put a time frame that would limit the ability to do that. I think that this would be a bill, this would be a legislative directive. There could be some ability to put some flexibility in that, to have a report back on the progress that's being made. And certainly the local stakeholders would be closely engaged with that process. I mean, although we may not pay the cost of preparing the study, I would expect we would be spending our own time and resources to be a part of it, to try to get our perspective on the table. And so we would, I think, have a good sense of how it's proceeding, and if we felt like, that this was, that there was going to have to be a change in the time frame or something like that, we would have the ability to go back and try to address that. But I think, I think there's good reason to seriously consider putting a time frame, because it really does show that, look, this is a serious study. It's not, it's the whole point of this is we really need to have a full vetting of the water resource implications as far as the communities that are affected. The other issue was the issue of past studies and how that would be accounted for. The suggestion there that came from the legislative committee was to address that, to seek an amendment to address the fact that there are past studies, that these studies don't address the issue in its entirety, that there are reasons to conduct an additional study, this new study, but that those past studies should in part inform the work of this new study. So they should be, the fact that they exist should be acknowledged, and that they should be considered in preparing the new study. But again, that's not the four corners of the analysis that would be done in this report as it relates to water supply reliability needs, but they would be factored in so that, again, you can hopefully take the issue off the table that you're completely ignoring the fact that existing studies do exist.
Well, have other agencies taken up support of this bill, and is there going to be some collaboration with the assemblymen in this? I mean, these are recommendations from our legislative committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are support positions being taken by agencies in our region that have happened and are happening.
I would rather, instead of requesting that it be amended, I would rather, consider it, and then if we have recommendations for amendments, make a recommendation. But I don't want to delay our support or opposition to this, waiting for these amendments to occur. I would rather have we recommend that these things, in addition, be considered. But that's how I feel about this. Because you never know the speed at which this stuff can gain traction. It could go fast. It could go a long time. And we could end up there, if we don't take a position, we could end up there not having a say in this because we're waiting around for a couple of amendments.
And to be clear, Director Davidson, what the board would do today, if it did follow the direction or recommendation of the legislative committee, would be to actually take a support position today, but to also, and there are different nuances on how you can do this. You can just take a support and provide direction to staff to work with the assemblymen and try to seek these amendments along the lines of what the legislative committee has considered. Or alternatively, you could take a support and amend position, that you do support the bill, but you also think that there are important amendments that should be considered in the process. Either way, you're not saying that we're going to sit on the sidelines until amendments are worked out. You're saying we support the bill, but we're providing direction. And I think that's there's been some time since the bill was introduced. There's some ideas that have been presented. I think that there's, some of which I think if we deal with it in the way suggested by the legislative committee, I think strengthen the bill itself. I think actually puts us in a better position with the bill. And so that, I would recommend a position of support and amend, or support it with direction from the board to try to seek amendments, either one.
Well, see, I don't support that. Because it'll be construed, if it's not amended, that we don't support the bill. And we may not, I don't know. But, so, my position is, I think we have a good relationship with Assemblyman Bigelow, and I think we can certainly, have, our general manager, relay our comments to him and make those requests. But it seems like there are going to be other recommendations also, and so the bill may change. I just hate not to take a position and then and try to force somebody to make some, that may not be, not everybody may have that same point of view. I think they're reasonable things to ask, but I don't think they're the most important. I think everyone acknowledges that there were previous studies done, when and where they took place, or why they took place, or if they took into the consideration of climate change. How old are the studies? Things are different than they were. I'm not a big global warming conspiracist, but the reality is that our state has said we have to take those things into consideration with everything we do. So certainly any of these studies that weren't taken under consideration without considering the effects of climate change, I don't think are really that valuable, because that's a requirement now. So, that's just my point of view on this matter. And as far as the time frame, I just don't know legislatively how that'll occur. I think it's important that there is, all these things need to be accomplished. If we're going to tell everybody we're going to do it, we should do it in a timely manner. But I don't know how we direct that time frame. We're just asking for a time frame, or are we going to give them a time frame?
No, and to be clear, that really the instruction to try to work with staff to look for amendments in these areas along the lines of what we talked about, it would not stop the board's decision to take a support position today, or in any way affect that timing. And in fact, if the board wants to be absolutely clear that it's a straight support position, that can certainly be the official position of the board. And if there is any desire to seek to be involved in a dialogue on amendments along the lines of the two issues that we've identified at the Legislative Committee, that could simply be direction to staff. I just want to make sure that if I spend time on that's the will of the board to pursue that.
Yeah. No, I
Okay.
appreciate that.
So that's your presentation, and so now we need a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion that we support this bill as written, and direct staff to incorporate the recommendations of our legislative committee in an amendment.
And I would definitely second that point. It's going to be up to you to carry forward our message on those amendments without diluting the direct statement of support for the bill.
Wait, no, I don't, yeah, Director Strange?
You have some thoughts?
No.
Well, my thoughts are that I really want to see a time frame associated with the studies. I think that my understanding is the discrepancies of the past studies really didn't look at reliability of water in today's world with the climate and movement of the snowfields and higher elevation, as well as any interest that we have on our McCollum system. We do not have enough water right now to meet our current needs. That's the bottom line as far as our ability to store. So there may be a day when we need to rely on our neighbors to the north in a partnership type of activity to bring water from existing storage facilities that might be enhanced or whatever into our service area to meet the current needs and supply that we do not have. And as a result, I can't support a bill that doesn't provide us that opportunity. So, and I know that this is maybe skirting the issue, but for me, we got to see a timeline associated with that. I really feel that that's important. I don't think it's a deal breaker necessarily. There are other agencies, water agencies, that have also, in fact, some of them have decided to not support it unless it's amended, you know, kind of a thing, to address those same issues that we brought up in the legislative committee. So I don't know what the easiest, most efficient way to move this process forward, to finish the additional studies and information analysis that we need so that we're all comfortable, you know, supporting a wild and scenic bill. But we need to move this process along, and we need to get a wild and scenic designation on that river that we can all live with.
Well, and I still think our support resolution can talk about the recommended amendments, but I just don't want to be, you know, I don't want to dilute our support or opposition to this thing by saying, well, we'll deal with it after you amend it or don't amend it, because there may not even be time. You know, I mean, the way these things get a life of their own, you know, they get traction and then they're gone. And so I'm happy to have, you know, I think we would count on our general manager to draft a resolution or recommendation, and then continue to work, you know, with Assemblyman Bigelow to accomplish those things. So I mean, I think we can do both. We can memorialize it, but support it and memorialize what we want to see, and then, but not require it for our support.
Right. One last point.
That way we don't have to go at it again. I mean, just,
Sure.
you know, every time it changes, are we going to have it back if it, you know, the bill changes slightly each time?
One last point then to discuss is the idea that you know, Dave has moved forward with the idea of bringing a facilitator, a professional facilitated meeting or meetings together, supported by the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, to really sit down and discuss the issues amongst all the players within this wild and scenic kind of a thing. Now, will the outcome of those facilitated meetings possibly change the face of 142? I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know if you know, we should consider, you know, wanting to bring the results of this facilitated meeting, or how those meetings might interplay with this or not. But you know, it's out there. David, do you have an update on any time frame schedule of such a meeting?
Sure, and I thank you for bringing that up, because I want to be absolutely clear on what that is and what it isn't. It's when I believe it was probably right after you were sworn in that day, we met with Catherine and her associates at the Conservancy, and it was just a very, very introductory, high level. We didn't get into nuances of policy language or that kind of thing. But one of the things that Catherine communicated to me, and we followed up with it about it afterwards, was that there was actually, she felt there was an opportunity to get support from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy on its own dime to provide a facilitator, a professional facilitator on water disputes for us on the general issues of wild and scenic, that we could, if we wanted to, we could apply for that. But and so I being a recovering attorney who loves alternative dispute resolution, the idea of and again, this is not mediation, it's not arbitration, something like that. It's just a facilitated discussion. I'm sure, Director Staines, you're very familiar with that. I personally saw that be very effective on the American River System with a water form agreement. And so the idea, and so we followed up on that. I spoke with the other water agencies to gain their understanding of where they were at on it and sensitivity to it. And ultimately what I had submitted, and Catherine and I both made a joint request, and that's what Jim Branham and the Sierra Nevada Conservancy asked for, was a request that they consider providing us with a facilitator to begin very high-level discussions again, just to try to gain a better understanding of the issues of the different groups, and hopefully that would lead to more discussions. But if not, at least we've made the effort to try to gain some better understanding. What I've heard is that from the Conservancy, they've said they are going to provide this to us. We are going to get somebody who's very experienced in the area and has handled a number of different contentious water issues in California. And the first thing that per the request that we made, was we would like for them to meet, that person to meet directly with each group, so basically on both sides of the issue of wild and scenic, and try to get a sense of our our needs and concerns as far as who should be at the table and what issues should be addressed in these initial series of meetings, then that person would formulate a proposal that we would then get to consider across the board. And if we decided we don't like the shape of the table and we don't think the issues are ones that we want to sit down for, then it doesn't have to go anywhere. But my hope would be that we could find some, small sliver place that we could get together and start that discussion. And again, they're just going to be paying for the initial meetings. If we decide that it has some merit and some potential, then we could continue to pursue that. I'm sure we would have to provide some of the funding for that in time if we do want to do that. But conceivably, this could be a way that you could, best case scenario, and maybe it's not possible, but best case, you could come to a common understanding of what the approach should be on the host of bills that have been introduced over the last couple of years on this.
Sounds like a future agenda item.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, what does this do to us now, writing a letter of support?
Right.
Does that negate us from,
Participating in those discussions? I don't think so. I mean, I think...
the results of that discussion? What will it do to that letter of support?
Well, I think, I think the fact that, that we will participate in that process, we plan to, depending on how it's structured, how the proposal comes out, we expect to participate in that. And the fact that AB 142 has a ways to go in the legislature. I mean, this is just the first policy committee on it. I would expect on the hearing there'll probably be some mention of the fact that this facilitated process is on its way to starting. I think that speaks to the fact that the underlying purpose is we want the analysis of the water supply reliability issues. However that comes to play, we want that analysis to be completed. AB 142 is the vehicle legislatively on the table right now that's being considered. The fact that this board would support it, I don't think precludes you from, if there's a better solution that's presented over time that has a concurrence of a broad stakeholders that addresses the underlying issue, I don't see why you couldn't, say, update your position, say we now embrace whatever that looks like.
This is going to be a moving target. I mean, it isn't like, this definitely doesn't preclude wild and scenic, and it doesn't,
That was my
accomplish it.
concern.
It's the way I look at this is like, we have a dispute. Water agencies don't think that this is an impediment to us securing future water rights. In my instance, for the west end of the county, which is who I serve, we've got dozens and dozens of wells that are dry. We've got a definite need. There's growth plan down there in our general plan. We need an additional water supply. I mean, we have to have the ability to do that. I mean, it sounds to me that what this will accomplish, and the environmental folks are saying, well, there's no water. There's you can do whatever you want. You just can't affect the free flowing nature. Well, the free flowing nature seems to be the impediment because we would hold water in the wintertime for use in the summertime. So in the wintertime, it wouldn't be free flowing. So I'd like to see that conflict, solved with a study like this. And then if a study like this can prove to us that we, could raise Lower Bear Reservoir or some other similar project that would, satisfy the needs of Amador and Calaveras counties, then why wouldn't we want to support wild and scenic? It isn't a question. It's a question in my mind of, a study like this will resolve the conflict between the two groups. And so why wouldn't we want to just support this and move forward and then, go ahead with the facilitation meetings and, try to understand each other a little bit better? I think those are all good things, but I'd like to do this now because I'd like to see the Board of Supervisors, if they haven't already done it, I'd like to see them follow. So Calaveras County was finally, united on this front as opposed to being opposed.
And just one last bit of information, the Bud's Board of Directors did consider this week and adopted the recommendation of staff that they take an opposed unless amended position.
Who did? Who did?
East Bay Mud.
Oh.
I know we had some of the members here in the audience were there at the meeting. They could probably speak better to that than I can, but some of their concerns about amendments were some of the same issues that we were just discussing, but they had a broader range of things as well.
Right. Okay. Public comment.
Al Gallo? Association. Thank you again for the opportunity to make comments, and I promise not to provoke anybody. Well, I think I promised that.
There's been a misunderstanding. My enthusiasm increases the depth of my voice. Believe me, that discussion I had was not with any sort of ill will or anger.
Speaking from the position of gratitude, I am so grateful we have New Maloney's Lake. So grateful. Can you imagine what it would be like for water for us if we didn't have that?
Stick over on the McCollum side, would you please? That's what we're
Well,
talking about.
perhaps. But one of the reasons we have to celebrate, there was a tremendous struggle at that time. The forces of reason and rationality and goodwill were in opposition to another force. It was called wild and scenic. Wild and scenic. Fortunately, the forces on the good side won, even though the wild and scenic forces had somebody chained to a tree so that if we raised the lake, we'd be drowning somebody. It didn't work. But because of that victory, we have water now. All right, we have the wild and scenic didn't go away. This is perhaps the first turnaround of wild and scenic. I really congratulate this board in opposing wild and scenic on the McCollum before, and I am disappointed in our Board of Supervisors not following through. It may change now because we have new supervisors. But our taxpayer group recommends that you support this 142. It's not without flaws, but it would have a tendency to prevent wild and scenic easily going into the McCollum River. Thank you.
My name is Peter Reich, gentleman, and I don't believe I'm getting a drop of water from that watershed over there. Issue. I think I'm getting it on my Hogan. So I'm just an unbiased, I'm foreigner. But the way that was put in, unfortunately, it's behind the scene. When a board of supervisors is being blackmailed, if you don't go along with it, you're not gonna get any grants. I mean, that's, to me, is a lot of bull manure, okay? It boils down to East Bay Mud wants to assure their water supply. I mean, they can use a lot of excuses and reasons, and I'm not gonna disagree with you, okay, on that. But the ideal facilitator, I had my stomach full of facilitator, because I know some of them, and they got more solid waste than most politicians.
I am one, Peter. Back up.
Well, are you bragging or complaining, sir? I mean, let's get things straight. You folks got elected for something, okay? You got elected to represent those dummies out there who's paid up through the you-know-what. And if you cannot make decisions for the benefit of your constituents or ratepayers, you're useless, put it bluntly. You need another teacher to tell you what you should and you shouldn't do. Hey, there's a whole bunch of, what do you call the nonprofit stakeholders that would like to change your mind. Earn your keep, folks. Represent your constituents. Whatever it's gonna be, you're still gonna be able to float down the river. Whatever you call it. You can still get onto that river and float your butt down there, and you can walk back up or ride your bike up there. You're not gonna do any harm to the environment. But you gotta stop sometime, get up and make a stand on principles. It has nothing to do with wild and scenic. East Bay Mud wants to have a control, putting it bluntly. The other thing, folks, you might want to consider, sometime visit some of those politicians, the one, Bigelow and so on. Take them out to lunch. I'm sure you can write it off. Talk to them as a person. I'm not taking his job. He can do all the scientific, reasonable thing, but I go up to Sacramento once in a while. Those elected officials don't know the whole from something else, you know? You gotta talk to the staff, or you gotta take those individuals out to lunch and sit down and talk to them as in face to face. Nobody mentioned the minority leader, Kristen Olson, who used to be our supervisors out here. She's accessible, and she has something to do with what's gonna be on the agenda or not. Okay, Bigelow's gonna have to go to her, and et cetera, the due process. So I would very strongly recommend, if you want some additional opinion, talk to your neighbors. A lot of people say, well, past is not past. Talk to those people in the Tuolumne County. How did that work out for them? Okay? You get some reality. It's a very inexpensive way to learn from the past so you don't make the same mistake. My little Calaveras River supposed to be stated that it was supposed to be one of the best fly fishing areas going down Calaveras River. You know, nobody wants to float down there. I don't know why. You got a place to get in, get out, and so on.
Blackberries.
Okay.
Well, that can be removed also. Accidents can happen. It's called raid. But no, the point I'm trying to make, folks, it's up to you. Because you're gonna be held accountable at the bottom line. He's signaling here. My time up?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Please, it's your decision, nobody's else, and you're gonna be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, I heard you make a
No,
I heard you make a remark that my constituents are dummies, and
Really?
I resent that. I heard,
Can you
yeah.
name your constituents, please?
Okay,
Oh.
excuse me.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Please don't
let's-
refer to them as
Let's
the-
go back to,
If you wanna have a
order,
debate, I'd be
please.
more than happy to
Okay,
take
all
part
right,
of it, sir.
Peter,
Yes,
please,
ma'am,
thank
right
you.
away.
Thank you. Thank you.
Comment, we can't respond.
Okay.
It's pretty clear that some of mine are.
Since we seem to be engaged in an effort to have the last word, I'll forego it. So folks in the back of the room are going to talk, I'm sure. Catherine Evatt, Foothill Conservancy. We did send you a letter on this yesterday, so I hope you did get a copy of that letter and have a chance to look at it. In our opinion, AB 142 is all about delay, and you're going to hear it's about finding facts, but it's really not about that. The questions it poses are too open-ended. Some of them would already be covered by a regular wild and scenic study, which, as Mr. Ayrton pointed out, isn't actually required, and some of them can't really be answered right now. And if you truly want updated facts, the study's going to have to look at more than water supply and climate change. It's also going to have to look at the updated biological, cultural, and recreational info that is now available on the McCollum River since the first forest study was done in 1990. There's definitely a change in the biological resources there. There's definitely been a change in how the hydro project is managed. It's very different. So if you want some facts about water projects and water supply in wild and scenic rivers, here are things that a study would find. One, it would find that on-stream dams are prohibited. That's a fact. It's clear in the bill. No local agency has proposed an on-stream dam on the McCollum River since the late 1980s, and it's largely considered to be too expensive and too difficult to do. The State Wild and Scenic River Law allows domestic diversions to local counties from the wild and scenic designated reaches. There are hundreds of those examples in the state. I don't know where they all are, but I understand that Eel River has quite a few. One of the ones you can just see is if you drive to Sacramento and you drive north on Howe Avenue and take a look west, you'll see the Fairbairn water intake. That's on a California wild and scenic river. So you can divert, counties can get permission for domestic diversions from California wild and scenic rivers. For projects on tributary streams, like the proposed Lower Bear Raise or anything that would be done in Calaveras County on a tributary, the State Water Resources Control Board accepts applications on tributaries to wild and scenic rivers for filing. They have a regulation about how they process those applications. And for the McCollum, they would look at all the same things they're going to look at for any water right application or any project that you would send to them anyway. They're going to look at water quality. They're going to look at cultural resources, recreational resources, scenic beauty, And all of those things as part of their normal review. So it's already clear in law what happens with those. If a study were to be done, they would see that there's only one pending water right for Amador or Calaveras County on the affected section of the North Fork or the main stem McCullough. That's one that Amador Water Agency has had pending since 2004, which it has not completed because it has not paid for the environmental analysis required. That's what a study would find. If they looked at Lower Bear, they would find that Lower Bear has never been studied for feasibility, even though there was a contract for feasibility study done in 2007, taken with the company URS by Amador Water Agency and the East Bay Municipal Utility District in San Joaquin interest. The study was never completed. So nobody knows if that can be feasible. There's no operations plan for the project. There's no water right application for a project. What is a study going to conclude? There's no information to analyze in a water supply study for Amador and Calaveras counties. One of the things you would find in a factual analysis is that counties will only get water if they can show the need and how they're going to put that water to beneficial use. That's not been demonstrated for either of these counties. Amador County has a surplus in its urban water management plan for McCullough River sources moving into the future, and with a new water conservation plan they're doing, or project they're doing now, piping a canal, it's going to provide another 1,000 acre-feet to add to that surplus. A study would also find that East Bay Municipal Utility District has just signed an agreement with San Joaquin County interests to store water in Comanche Reservoir for use in restoring groundwater in San Joaquin County. So San Joaquin County is going to pay East Bay Mud a whopping $2 an acre foot for storage in an existing storage facility. Why can't CCWD look at that? If the western end of the county is where you need water, shouldn't you be talking to the people who have the big water storage facilities and obviously are willing to use them and share with their neighbors? Right now, there are 50 conservation groups and businesses opposing 142. East Bay Mud opposes unless amended, and they also added a provision that's been in every other study bill, which would provide interim protection to the river while the study is pending. And, you know, one of the problems we have with this bill is there's no indication that Assemblyman Bigelow would actually support wild and scenic designation if a recommendation in favor were the result of the study. So in summary, I'd just like to say this is a waste of public funds. The results would be speculative at best. It's not about getting to river protection or finding facts. It's only about delay. Governor Brown has a reputation for vetoing study bills, which I'm sure is known to Mr. Bigelow, and so we would urge you to oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Her letter is missing all the attachments. Catherine, your letter that you sent to us was missing all of the attachments.
I know, and my apologies for that. That came out of our office, and I don't know quite why that happened.
Could you email
But
those
I have-
attachments? Could you just email them to us?
Sure, I'd be happy to, but meanwhile, I'll give this copy of the Schneider letter. So it's from the late Nan Schneider, and it's about water rights applications on wild and scenic rivers, and actually includes excerpts from the regulations. Yes, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Make that to all the more.
To Mona and ask her.
Good morning, it is still morning. I'm Bob Leitzel from McCallamy Hill. I'm a civil and traffic engineer in California. I don't specialize in water rights, but I can read, so I do have some information, and I don't know that I have any information you don't already know. The only one I know here is Larry Diamond, because it's been a long time since I worked for the district. I was a resident engineer on La Contenta water and sewer projects, for those of you who are interested at all. In California, there are 23 national wild and scenic river segments and 13 state wild and scenic segments. And I believe that there are water districts probably involved in water rights on all of those rivers in some way or another, so that information's available on whether you can or can't easily develop your remaining water rights. And I just want to read one paragraph that's probably been addressed before, and this is in the State Water Act. No water diversion facility may be constructed on any river segment included in the system unless the Resources Secretary determines that the facility is needed to supply domestic water to local residents, and that the facility will not adversely affect the river's free-flowing condition and natural character. So it seems to me that the state law on wild and scenic protects the local interests, and you're better off with the wild and scenic designation on the state level because it says diversions can be for only local residents, and that would be Amador County and Calaveras County. I don't take any position on the law that's, or the study that's being proposed. Catherine has already done that. I suppose I should say that I'm also on the board of the Foothill Conservancy, just to clarify everything. It's somebody says, well, he's prejudiced. Well, I am prejudiced, but as a local resident, I would like to see the recreational value of the river preserved without affecting your water rights and your ability to take the water that you're entitled to for us, for the residents of Calaveras and Amador. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any more public comment? Okay. Mona will call, oh, excuse me, yes.
Good morning. My name is Rich Farrington. I'm the president of the Amador Water Agency Board of Directors. I'm here to ask for your support for AB 142, a study of the McCallum for wild and scenic suitability and possible impact on our water supplies. The Amador Water Agency Board voted unanimous to support 142, and then the Board of Supervisors have also voted to support it, as well as the Sutter Creek and Jackson City Council. AB 142 would simply require a transparent disclosure of potential impacts of wild and scenic on the McCallum water supplies, where we get 97% of our water. In the next couple of years, it probably increased to about 99% as we convert Comanche area residents to surface water. This is much like having to do an EIR, environmental impact report, on a project or a general plan. And we're required to do that on all of our projects. And was mentioned this water right application, which it's been pending for 10 years. But that's simply moving our existing water right from down in the Pardee area up to upcountry, which is a different intake location on the river. And we've been hoping to get that, get behind the county general plan. They've been working on that for about 6 or 7 years, and probably slowed down because of the economy. But anyway, so that we had a general plan to really focus on as far as supporting the development, because obviously the county makes land use decisions. We think we can save, well, we would have to, we've had a lot of pressure from especially environmental groups such as Catherine to do a very detailed growth-inducing impact study for just moving this water right up country, existing water right of us. And we think that if the county general plan and EIR are finished and we can dovetail into that, basing the same information, that it would probably save us roughly $250,000. We think that addressing water supply issues, especially related to the drought and climate change, are really critical. The 4-year drought that we're in has really made this a lot more critical. And the study would establish, I think, common facts, get updates where relevant, use existing information where that's available, and provide a basis for going forward for hopefully a broadly supported proposal for designation of the McCallum Wild and Scenic. as a point, I think mentioned that Public Resource Code 5093.547 already requires a study. And by the way, it does include, does say that water is to be addressed. It says, and the reasonably foreseeable potential uses of land and water which will be enhanced or closed or curtailed if the river or river segment were included in the segment system. Federal studies have been made, but there's only one suitability study, the Bureau of Land Management study, that was completed. There are gaps, and they need to be filled in, they need to be updated. The biggest threat from climate change is the disappearing snowpack. That is a threat to us and probably your county, which has been receding since the glacier started melting off 10,000 years ago. So really no surprise that natural climate does change. The California Water Plan, an update released last October, estimates that 1 trillion gallons of water will be lost because of this melting and receding snowpack. And that keeps our streams flowing through the summer as it melts. And researchers are predicting that as the climate warms, droughts will be longer and drier. One research paper I read said that he estimates an 80 or 90% chance of a 10-year drought, which is not surprising because Australia just got through a 15-year drought down there. Even Supervisor Chris Wright said that, quote, right now, a lot of people are just scared because of the fact that our weather patterns are changing. Opponents claim that 142 is a delaying tactic, but there are many things in laws that require delays to protect health and safety and the environment, and including EIRs, that requirement. Is that
Yeah,
for me?
times, yeah.
Okay. We must be vigilant. Are you going to get extra time for a president of a... Okay, yeah.
Usually much less.
By the way, the time frame issue, I think that we're certainly open to discussions about that, but